This is the story of a man who was born in Fresno, California in 1917. He was the youngest of 4 children in a close-knit Armenian immigrant family who had fled from an unstable and falling apart Ottoman Empire. His father was an adventurous fruit vendor who always looked for new possibilities to make money out of nothing. It worked for a short time, and the family could afford a huge farm out in the San Joaquin Valley, where they specialized on growing watermelons and raisins. But soon the debt load became unbearable to the farm's cash flow, and the recession of 1921 finally turned his farm into bankruptcy, and the family had to relocate to a poor neighborhood in Los Angeles. Times were hard in those days, and our hero, we'll call him K for now, found himself out on the streets aged 9, trying to sell newspapers to contribute to his family's financial dilemma. Due to missed rent payments and forced evictions, the family had to move around various LA neighborhoods, and so K constantly had to change schools. Street and yard fights were an everyday thing for the young kid to survive and prove himself. In his teens, the fighting became too much, and after being expelled from numerous schools and learning some mechanical skills, he dropped out of school altogether after grade 8. And that would be the end of his formal education. K entered the Southern California job market as a middle school dropout at the worst possible time, the Great Depression of the 1930s. In 1933, the US started a new program for job creations and offered well-paid government-funded public work in national parks and forests nationwide. K, alongside his best friend, took up such an offer in the harsh conditions of the Sequoia National Park. They worked through an entire 6 months, during wintertime and high on top of a mountain, digging ground, chopping wood and clearing paths. He came back to LA a different beast, hard, chiseled, muscular, and also near his full height of 5'11". His older brother, who had been a boxer himself to earn money for the family, immediately noticed K's transformation and started training him to become a boxer. The talent was obvious, and he became a tough and scrawny fighter nicknamed Rifle Wright, who would go on and become the Pacific Amateur Welterweight Champion. But seeing the disastrous effects prize fighting had had on his brother, including improper speech and visible dents in his face, K opted against turning professional and soon after found a new love: aviation. His flying instructor was the famous woman Pancho Barnes, the pioneer aviator who had the credit of breaking America's airspeed record. As K did not have a wallet heavy enough to pay for the flying lessons then, he had to milk and look after the cattle of Barnes as a fee for the flying lessons he got from her. In 1941, K became a licensed pilot after only 6 months of training, and meanwhile, the whole of Europe was in fully fledged war, which naturally demanded a huge demand for trained pilots. Despite US neutrality at the time, the Americans knew what was coming, and so were preparing to enter the war themselves. K was immediately hired as a cadet flying instructor by the US Army. But it wasn't long before K wanted to actively join the war after seeing so many of his cadets flying over to Europe to fight, but at the same time knew that if he enlisted, he would be at the mercy of the US Army, and that they would not let him go to actively fight due to his function as an instructor. So he decided to take on a paid job at the British RAF forces, the Royal Air Force, to fly brand new factory-fresh warplanes over the Atlantic from America to Europe, so they could be used in battle. And so starting from 1942, K flew 33 planes over the ocean and played his part in defeating the German war machine. Back in those days, flying over the Atlantic was dangerous, and over 500 colleagues of him lost their lives.